Starting things off with a DC rivalry you likely would never think of. I have Superman and Wonder Woman. Why don't most people think of this one to start? How about because these two are both inherently heroes who also have an extremely close bond as founding members of the Justice League and as 2/3 of DC's Holy Trinity. They often get along so well that many have shipped these two together before in the past, and they've even actually kind of dated in the main continuity, or at least a version of Superman dated Wonder Woman. However, they don't always get along, and there have always been other realities, such as Wonder Woman Dead Earth, where their friendship has actually shattered into a million pieces because their rivalry and feud was simply that strong. In fact, in that reality, Wonder Woman and Superman's epic fight was so full of passion and hate and so powerful that it ended up destroying all of Earth as a result. What are two heroes that you wouldn't expect to fight each other, but where you could see a reality where that happens? Let me know down in the comments. This next rivalry is just not one you'd be thinking of likely at all, because they hail from two very different publishers and therefore realities. We're talking about the feud between Batman and Spawn, which of course hails from their own crossover comic. Of course, in the end, these two do choose to team up, but like all good crossovers and team-up stories in comics, initially there is a misunderstanding and also some clashing of personalities, I'd say, which causes these two to at first be locked in a fight with one another. Fortunately, they're able to rise above their differences and both recognize each other ultimately as both being heroes in the end. Superman and the Flash have had this bizarre, long-standing rivalry in regards to who is faster between them. Kind of a weird thing since, the Flash's whole thing is being fast, but Superman is also pretty fast, so I digress. Likely, this really, I don't think, has much to do with their own concerns surrounding the truth of who would actually win in a foot race, and instead is more about the fans wanting to know in terms of power scaling, something that many fans are major fans of, deciding who can run faster, punch harder, heal more potently, etc., etc. If you are one of those folks who is wondering, all I'll say is while Superman may have seemingly had some near victories against the Flash in the past, those races were for charity. Some people might think of these two as having a rivalry, but if they did, it would probably be for the wrong reasons. While Zatanna and Catwoman have both been love interests of Batman in the past, that is not where their rivalry actually stems from. Instead, these two actually have issues because of something very specific that happened between them. Really, something that Zatanna did to Catwoman. Zatanna basically flipped Selina's alignment, and when Catwoman finds out, she is understandably upset, as not only can she no longer trust Zatanna, but she is also now questioning who she really is, as she feels her choice to be a hero was possibly not even her own. Man, that would really mess you up. That would really mess you up. Despite both being members of the same team, these two have had beef in the past as well. A lot of this comes from their clash of personalities, I would say. Green Arrow tends to be more brash than Batman and is also actively vocal when he doesn't agree with Batman's plans, something Batman takes issue with usually, especially considering, how much time and effort and how careful he typically is when it comes to crafting said plans. I think in some ways their feud comes from the fact that they are both so similar. Both of them more rely on skill sets rather than
We get it. Things are more expensive than ever.
Sets rather than superpowers to operate as heroes, and both are millionaire orphans whose hero journey
That ad was very annoying, by the way.
have both been very personal ones, I would say. There's also that one time that they literally had a love triangle with Black Canary as well, but that was back in a previous continuity at this point. Also, while Batman, has been an orphan since he was a kid, I know that Ollie hasn't, but Ollie does end up kind of becoming one later in his life, so yeah. This one might surprise some folks out there, as these two have a history of being romantic partners, so you wouldn't normally think of them as also being rivals, and yet here we are, talking about Batman and Zatanna. How did these two go from being old friends with, I would say, a romantic spark, and in some realities, more or less of a romantic spark, to rivals? Well, it all went down after Batman learned, similarly to Catwoman, that Zatanna had manipulated his mind. Zatanna, girl, you need to stop messing with people's heads. It's just not gaining you any allies. In fact, instead, Batman was so upset that he pretty much cut Z off for a good while, no longer even referring to her by his nickname for her, Z, but instead simply calling her by her full name, Zatanna. Ouch. You know you're in trouble when someone calls you by like your full name. You're like, ooh, I did something wrong. However, time heals all wounds, and fortunately, as time has gone on, after Zatanna obviously apologized, Batman has moved towards forgiving her and trusting her again, even eventually resuming the use of her nickname. This next one isn't one that comes to mind as quickly, but once you think of it, you cannot get it out of your head. It sticks in your head like, oh, I don't know, an explosive might. Zod and Waller have had a rivalry that runs hot, because Waller is a collector of villains, let's be honest, thanks to her involvement in Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad. She ends up attempting to forcefully recruit Zod to her cause, putting an explosive into his head, like she does with pretty much everybody else, to make him heal for, fear of being eliminated. That's what she do. He might be a Kryptonian, but this is also why she put a special explosive in his head, a kryptonite-based one. However, Zod does not take kindly to this treatment and is such an unhinged and determined villain that rather than accept his lot, he simply uses his heat vision to remove said device from his brain, allowing him the freedom to fight back and escape Waller's clutches. Zod will of course always remember that Waller attempted to leash him, and Waller will always think of him as the one that got away and escaped her clutches. Neither of these characters is used to anyone telling them what to do, which is also why they're so well suited to being rivals when their paths do end up crossing. Some may forget that this next rivalry exists, but I would say it most definitely does. It has come in and out of prominence over the years, but oddly, Lady Shiva is known to be one of the most skilled martial artists and assassins in the world, and has a direct rivalry with Black Canary as a result of that, because Black Canary is also equally skilled. In fact, I think Black Canary is ranked among one of the best fighters in all of the DC universe, and I would say in many scenarios, she's also shown herself to be even more capable than Lady Shiva. Oftentimes, while they have worked together more than they have fought against one another, the rivalry actually, I would say, stems from who between them is just the better fighter. Dinah, of course, also has her literal superpowers with her Canary Cry, which does give her an edge in terms of who would win against who, though, she doesn't typically use it when fighting to determine skill. She wouldn't use her Canary Cry because it's about, who can fight better. Black Canary is often pulled into fights with Lady Shiva so that Shiva can kind of prove herself to be superior to her, although often Canary is the one who actually comes out on top between them. Although there have been times when Lady Shiva has also even offered to train Canary, although Canary has said no thanks. That being said, there is a certain amount of respect that these women obviously have for each other as well, which has also contributed to them teaming up at times throughout their history, despite, like I said, being kind of rivals. While many expect this next one, I would say on some kind of level, I don't think anyone would have anticipated that Damian Wayne, out of all the Robins, would attempt to target Harley and make a specific nemesis out of her. Feels odd, right? But that is exactly what happened, or what Damian attempted to have happen in the Harley Quinn animated series. Here, Damian Wayne is the current Robin for Batman, when in season 1 of the animated series, he crosses paths with Harley Quinn. Honestly, I love this depiction of Damian too. He's such a brat, and I love it. Harley is at the time attempting to make Batman her own nemesis, and as such refuses to fight Robin, who she sees as being, a kid.
I was trying to pause that phone and act right. Yo, I think a good rivalry in the comics would be Ghost Rider and Quicksilver. I don't know, Speedster the rest of the guy who had flames on his head, skeleton. That sounds horrible, does it, guys? More Kombat vs. DC Universe. I mean, that was a video game, but that was a crossover between two good fighting games, but yeah.
He's just too young for her to fight. After this interaction, though, Damian actually tells a different version of this story when they met, while on the Tawny Young show, where he claims that he actually beat Harley and that she actually begged to be his nemesis. Ultimately, it's later revealed in the episode that Damian is kind of searching for a nemesis as a result of his own insecurities, and I would say to prove himself capable to his father, Batman, who later confesses to Damian that he didn't actually have his own nemesis until he was in his 20s. So maybe Damian shouldn't be so harsh on himself. Darkseid and Anti-Monitor are not people I would think of when I think of rivals for either of these major villainous characters. There's a lot of other people I would put first, in my mind. Heroes, for example. But that is what these two ultimately are to each other as well. I know, kind of surprising. Well, surprising if you didn't read a certain event. Where did this feud come from, and why does this rivalry exist? Well, it turns out that it has to do with each of these villains' plans for the universe. Anti-Monitor is hell-bent on destroying everything, and Darkseid just simply wants to rebuild the universe to, fit his own image. damage. No big deal. As a result, these two fought for what the fate of the universe should be. That's right, they fought each other for who would actually get to decide how to mess up the universe, and each in their own way. This all came to a head in Darkseid War, where it's also alluded to that this rivalry has actually existed for a very long time. The clash of these two ultimately resulted in both of them being defeated, but in different ways. That's about it for this one. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight.
Bye, guys. Also, have a good day today, y'all. I know it's 12:02 afternoon. No, 12:03 afternoon. Wait a change in front of me, Time. Time, you want to fight? Let's fight, Time. Let's fight up in here. Anyway, guys, I'm going to fight Time off camera. Be like a starfire. Shoot a star boat. Have a good day and every day. Okay, bye, guys. Bye-bye.